This is our Algebra 2 study guide for test number 13. This is part 2, we're picking up on number 9. 4x squared plus 49 equals 0. Undo plus 49 by subtracting it on both sides. So we have 4x squared equals negative 49. Undo 4 times something by dividing by 4 on both sides. So you have x squared equals negative 49 over 4. And then undo x squared by taking the square root of both sides, which is x equals the square root of negative 49 over the square root of 4. So when we simplify that square root at the bottom, we know that the square root of negative 49, you have to remove that negative by calling it I times the square root of 49 over the square root of 4, we know is 2. So we can simplify it one step farther. We know the square root of 49 is 7. So plus or minus or positive or negative 7 times I over 2. 4y plus 10 equals negative 6 times y minus 7. Distribute first. Negative 6y plus 42. Move your smaller y's over to your larger one by subtracting 6y on, adding 6y on both sides will give you 10y to this side. Plus 7 equals 42. Get rid of plus 7 by subtracting it, and 10y equals 35. Then get rid of 10 times something by dividing by 10 on both sides, and y equals 35 over 10, which the number 5 goes into. It goes into 35 7 times, and then the 10 twice. So a simplified improper fraction, 7 over 2. Distribute 6 times y and 6 times 2. Undo plus 12 by subtracting it. 6y equals 72. Undo 6 times something by dividing by 6. And y equals, we know it goes into 7 one time and into 12 twice. So y is 12. We're writing it in form a plus bi. So in order to get the negative from under that radical, you have to multiply it by I. So I times the square root of 36 plus 1. So I plus or minus 6 plus 1. It's going to be plus or minus. I is actually going to multiply by that because it's multiplying. See, we have it here multiplying. So if we reorder it the way they have it here, positive 1 plus or minus 6 times I is the better order. In order to find, this is standard form, a x squared plus bx plus, we're looking for c. C equals b divided by 2 squared. So we have b's value at 12 divided by 2 squared, which is 6 squared. So c's value is 36. So plus 36. Okay, for number 14, we already worked it out. X squared plus 8x. You can talk through each step. Plus 8x. This is not a perfect trinomial. X squared plus 8x plus 9. So you have to undo that plus, plus 19. You have to undo that plus 19 by subtracting it. So you're left with x squared plus 8x. And we don't quite know what c is yet. We're going to figure that out real quick. And so you have a blank here. So plus c equals, you move negative 19 over to the other side. In order to find c, you do it here. C equals b over 2 squared. B's value is 8. Over 2 means 4, because 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 4 squared is 16. So that's where we get here c's value at 16 plus 16. If you add 16 to the left, you have to add 16 to the right. So what we have here is a perfect trinomial. Take the square root of x squared, and it gives you x, and the square root of 16, it gives you 4. This tells you plus in the middle. So that perfect trinomial became a binomial x plus 4 squared. equals when we combine negative 19 and positive 16, we get negative 3. So in order to get rid of x plus 4 squared, in order to get rid of the squaring of something, take the square root of it. If you do that to one side, you have to do it to the other. The square root cancels out x squared. So it leaves you with x plus 4 is equal to the square root of negative 3, which we know we can't leave a negative under a square root sign. So that becomes I times the square root of 3. So x plus 4 times I equals x, I times the square root of 3. Undo plus 4. So we have x plus 4 equals I times the square root of 3. Undo plus 4 to get x by itself. And that leaves you with x equals negative 4, because when you subtract 4 from the right, it'll be negative, plus or minus the square root of 3 times I. 15 says y equals x squared minus 10x plus 23. Plus 23 is not an acceptable C value because it won't make a perfect trinomial. So you have to subtract 23 on both sides. So you have x squared minus 10x, and you have y minus 23 on the left. Now you have to subtract it. You have to find C's value. Remember, C is b divided by 2 squared, so negative 10 divided by 2 is negative 5 squared, and that's where we get plus 25 for C. So if you add 25 to the right, you have to add it to the left. So when you simplify the left, you have y plus 2. So y plus 2 equals the square root of x squared is x. The square root of 25 is 5. This tells you minus in the middle, so x minus 5 squared. And then in order to get vertex form, just get rid of that plus 2 by subtracting it on both sides. So y equals x minus 5 squared minus 2. 16, using a quadratic formula. Quadratic formula, x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Okay, so all that mouthful being said, all you have to do with this one is plug the values in and simplify it. It's in standard form already, so this is a, this is b, and this is c. So when you plug in all of those values in, x equals a negative b value plus or minus, because it's talking about a square root, b squared minus 4 times a times c. And all of that's going to be over 2 times a. And all we have to do is plug our values in. Everywhere where we have a, it's going to be negative 4. So in place of a here, we'll have negative 4. In place of this one, we'll have negative 4. Everywhere we have a b, we're going to plug in negative 7. So negative 7 and negative 7. And then everywhere we have that c value is negative 5. So then we just have to simplify it. Negative 7 is positive 7 plus or minus the square root. Negative 7 squared is 49. Negative 4 times negative 4 is going to be plus 16. And then 16 times negative 5 is going to be a larger number. So 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. So 16 times negative 5, we know 6 times 5 is 30. And then 5 times 1 plus 3 is going to be 80. So we have negative 80 there. So 49 minus 80, that's still under the radical symbol. So 7 plus or minus that over negative 8. Again, all of that's still equal to x. We could simplify what's under that radical. 49 minus 80, so that's opposite sign, subtract 80 minus 49. And you're going to get 1. You're going to get a negative 31 for that one. So the square root of negative 31, 7 plus or minus that over negative 8. Then the last thing we have to do is get that negative, since 31 is not a perfect square, get that negative from under that radical symbol. So 7 plus or minus the square root of 31 times I over negative 8 equals x. And that great big funky number value is what you have for your answer. FOIL method. First, 7 times negative 8 is negative 56. Outer, 7 times square root of 2 is positive 7 square root of 2. Inner, negative square root of 2 times negative 8 is positive 8 square root of 2. And then last terms, negative square root of 2 times positive square root of 2 is going to be negative, and it'll be the square root of 4, which simplifies right back to the radicand, which is 2. We can combine the like terms. We have negative 56 and negative 2, which gives you negative 58. And we have 7 times the square root of 2 plus 8 times the square root of 2, which gives you plus 15 square root of 2. 18 says write this one in vertex form. Well, what you need to do is you need to take 3 out because you want x squared to have a coefficient of 1. So 3 times x squared plus 4x plus 9 equals y. So now we want to find the value of c. We could leave 9 right there. We don't even have to move it. We want to find that value of c. So remember, c is equal to b divided by 2 squared, and b's value in this case, ax squared plus bx plus c is the one we're going to look for. And in fact, we can write it that way where we can see it. So plus c and then plus 9 we'll leave alone. So we're adding in plus c. So we're looking for c's value. So 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 2 squared is 4. So c's value is a positive 4, so plus 4. If we add 4 there, we have to make sure to add 4 here. But more specifically, with this, since we don't have a coefficient of 1, we have to take that 3 that's up front, and we have to multiply that by 4. So now we have 12 plus y equals 3, and then we can create our trinomial from here. We can create our binomial. The square root of x squared is x. The square root of 4 is 2, and the plus in the middle. So x plus 2 squared, and then it's plus 9. The last thing we have to do to make vertex form is get rid of my positive 12 by subtracting it. Now we have 3 times x plus 2 squared minus 3. There's your vertex form because you can see the vertex, negative 2, negative 3. 19, we're writing this one in, we're writing this, the equation of this parabola. Okay, so you see the vertex is negative 4, negative 2. Remember, it's the opposite of the x and then whatever the y says. So if your vertex form is y equals a times x minus h squared plus k, remember, you don't have to remember what h and k is. Just remember that what's in the parentheses is x, and then what's outside is y. So again, it's the opposite of this negative 4. That's why we have plus 4 written right there. And it's whatever this y says, negative 2, so that's why we have minus 2 written right there. So the only thing we're looking for, we don't know, this is what it's ultimately going to be, negative 5 in a minute, but we have a in that spot. So we're looking for the value of a now. So that's when you take the other point to negative 182 and plug in those values for x and y. In place of x, you plug in 2. In place of y, you plug in negative 182. So then you're only left with a as a variable. Then simplify for everything and then undo for a. So 2 plus 4 is 6. 6 squared is 36. So now you can't do any more simplifying. You just have to start undoing minus 2 first by adding it to both sides, and you get negative 180. Then divide by 36 on both sides, and a equals negative 5. So that's when you just bring that value, negative 5, and plug it right back into a. So you have your new equation, y equals negative 5 times x plus 4 squared minus 2. And that's your equation in vertex form. Then graph this equation here. You can see your vertex x. You can see this one. It's the opposite value, negative 4, and it's whatever this one is, 7. So that's your vertex, negative 4, 7. So at negative 4, positive 7 is where we're going to put our first point. That's our vertex. And this is a positive value, so even though we have it written this way, it's actually going to open up this way. So we'll move this graph down a little bit just where we can see it a little bit easier. So negative 4, positive 7 is your vertex. And it's going to open up like a U. So you have to go to the next x value. The next x value is negative 3. So when x equals negative 3, just plug in it into the rest of the equation. Y equals negative 3 plus 4 squared plus 7. Negative 3 plus 4 is 1 squared, which is 1 plus 7. So y's value is going to be 8. So when x is negative 3, y's value is 8. So plot that next one. So negative 3, we're going to go up to the next higher value. So your line of symmetry goes through x's value at negative 4. You can see that just looking at the vertex form of it. So if that point is negative 3, positive 8, then that's where that one's going to go. You just go one value over to the left and mimic it on the other side of the line of symmetry. So negative 5, 8, and then just go one more to this next one here, which is x's value at negative 2. So when x equals negative 2, we'll just plug it into the equation. Y equals negative 2 plus 4 this time squared plus 7. Negative 2 plus 4 is 2 squared plus 7, which is 4. And we know 4 plus 7 is 11. So when x is negative 2, y's value is 11. So that's the last point that we have to figure out. Negative 2, 11. So we're up to negative 3, 8. So we got to go 9, 10, 11. We got to go that high. So for this next one, plot negative 2, 11, and then mimic it on the other side by going one more. And then we can create our parabola from there. So we have 5 points. It says in a baseball game, an outfielder throws a ball to the second baseman. The path of the ball is modeled by the equation y equals negative 1 over 900 times x minus 375 divided by 2 squared plus 705 divided by 16, where y is the height of the ball in feet after the ball has traveled x feet horizontally. The second baseman catches the ball at the same height as the height at which the outfielder released it. So A says, what was the maximum height of the ball along its path? So the maximum height. So looking at this equation and all of that, all those numbers and all of those words, it's as easy as it actually looks. You're just looking for the vertex. You can see based on the fact that it's negative that it's going to create a graph that looks like this. So it says what's the maximum height? You're just looking for here, the top of the vertex. So you can see the vertex in this form. We know it's the opposite of whatever this is. So it's 375 over 2 positive. And we know it's whatever exactly this says, 705 over 16. So it says the y value is how high, it's maximum. How high is it going to get? So this is the y value. So 705 divided by 16. It says answer to the nearest foot. So when you divide 705 by 16, you get 44 or a little bit better than 44 feet. So for the first question, it's right around, or it says answer to the nearest foot, so 44 feet. It says how far was the second baseman from the outfielder at the time he caught the ball? Well, let's look and see what's going on. If you look at your graph, that's the throw. It says the throw, it says an outfielder throws it to the second baseman. So from the outfielder to the second baseman, how far was he from the outfielder? So this is the distance down here, the distance and the height. So how far away is he? So he was this far. You're looking at the x value. 375 divided by 2. Again, that's not an even number, so it's not going to divide evenly, but divided by 2 and says, again, we'll estimate it to the nearest foot, 187 feet. So that one's 187. Actually, it's in a half feet, so we'll round that up to 188 feet away. And then it says, how high above the ground was the ball when it left the hand of the outfielder? And that's where this comes into play right here, negative 1 over 900. Okay, so for number 2, it says use the graph of y equals x minus 2 squared plus 5. You translate the parabola to the right 2 units and down 7 units. What's the equation of the new parabola in vertex form? Okay, so if the vertex of it is the opposite of this, so it's 3, and it's whatever this one says, so it's 5. So there's your vertex of it, just how it's written. It says if you translate it 2 units down, so this is the one that goes up and down, the y value. So it says if you translate that one 2 units down, now you have 3 there. And it says and it said, I'm sorry, I read it wrong. It says to the right 2 units. So this is the one that's left and right. So to the right 2 units, that one goes up to 5. And then it says down 7 units. So this one goes to -2. So it says, if you translate it, what is the equation of the new parabola in vertex form? So just like it was a second ago, y equals x minus 5 squared minus 2, because you use those values for x and y. It says if you translate the original one again, left 2 units and up 7 units, so you take that same 3, 5 that we got a second ago, and now it says go left 2 units, so that one's going to be 1, and up 7 units, so that one's going to be 12. So that's your new vertex. So your new equation is going to say y equals x minus 1 squared plus 12. And then the last one says, how could you translate the new parabola in part A to get the new parabola in part B? How could you translate from this one to this one? So you just ask yourself, how many times do I have to go from -5 to -1? How many times do I have to go to the right? This would be going to the right. And how many times do I have to go up from -2 to +12? So how many times do I have to go up? So you would go to the right 4 times. So right 4 times, and we would go up from -2 to 12. You would go up 14 times.